It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 28, looking at the groups and teams of the 2024 Copa America. This episode is looking at the players of Colombia. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 28 on the players of the 2024 Copa America. This episode covers Colombia's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and categorize them into definite, likely, possible, and so on. And we'll also give a little biographical or career information on the players. Part two will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover a couple of other things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three sections. Section one, where we look at some general information on the team. Section two, where we cover the main candidates in each position, give some career information and their likelihood of making the squad. We're only going to give career information for the main candidates. And section three, we're going to summarize and conclude and see if we can nominate any starters. Let's begin then with section one, some general information on the team. And we'll look at retirements here. And this title may be better, or this section may be better titled players off the squad or absent or notable absence or something like that. Let's take a look. We have, first of all, Radamel Falcao, the forward, captain of the team, with 104 caps and 36 goals since 2007. He's still actively playing club soccer, despite his age. He's 38 years old and has, of course, been part of many tournaments. All of these players will have been. He was injured, though, for the World Cup in 2014, and he didn't play the Copa America in 2021. However, he has been with the team since that time, last appearing for the national team in March 2023. But Radamel Falcao doesn't seem to be a candidate for this tournament. Next, we have Edwin Cardona, an attacking midfielder who was with Colombia from 2014 to 2021. He's actually only 32 years old, so still may come back, but 45 caps and 6 goals for Edward Cardona. He was part of the 2021 Gold Cup there, but after starting games 1, 2, and 3, he did lose his starting position. He was a bit of a surprise non-selection for the 2018 World Cup, Edwin Cardona, and last appeared for the national team in that 2021 Copa America. Next, we have Oscar Murillo, not really a veteran of the squad. I'll just say that he was a starter in the 2021 Copa America. Actually lost his position after game one, but we're going to kind of hark back to the 2021 Copa America here for people who are looking for players who are main players in that tournament. Next, we have Miguel Borja, and he is also a starter in the 2021 Copa America, but hasn't appeared for the national team since being on the bench in March 2022. And I don't think I mentioned Oscar Murillo last appearing on the bench in February 2022. So all of these players seem to be off the squad. Finally, William Tosillo. Was a substitute initially in the 2021 Copa America, but gained a starting position after game one, but last appeared in March of 2022. So I don't think we'll be seeing any of these players as candidates in the Cup. Let's move on to our second section, club affiliation. So we'll try to give a sense of what kind of teams the players play for. We kind of look at the top candidate in each position or each of the main positions. So we have David Ospina with 128 caps with the national team. He plays for Al Nasser, seems to be kind of an all-star team in Saudi Arabia there, collecting players like Ospina who seem to be beyond their prime but are still, still active. David Ospina probably won't be the starting keeper here. We'll get into that in section 2. The top defenseman, Santiago Arias, with 57 caps, plays for Bahia in Brazil. So that kind of represents a group of players who play in Brazil or in Argentina. So not many of them, especially the A team, playing in Colombia. In fact, none of them are. But we do have quite a few playing for Brazil or Argentinian teams. Top midfielder, James Rodriguez, fits into that same category. He's the captain of the team now, and he's with Sao Paulo in Brazil, so same story there. We also, I'm kind of cheating here, have another top midfielder in Juan Cuadrado, more of a substitute or backup player now, but he's still with Inter Milan in Italy. And we do have quite a few players with not necessarily top clubs. Well, Inter Milan is pretty good, but not many at the level of Inter Milan. But we do have fairly high up clubs in first divisions in countries represented, like Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia, Cruz Azul in Mexico, Braha in Portugal, and Galatasaray in Turkey, for example. Finally, we look at top forward Luis Diaz. He plays for Liverpool in England, 51 caps and 13 goals for him. And that kind of represents other players playing in England, not necessarily with top clubs like Luis Diaz, but clubs like Aston Villa and Bournemouth are fairly well represented in the A team. And we'll just finish with a quick look at the B team. Some of those players do play in Colombia for some of the top clubs like Millonarios, America de Cali, and Junior. I don't want to get into naming all of their clubs, but those would be examples of the top clubs there. I'd say about a third of them still there. And then some of the younger players are with good teams. They haven't really emerged on the national team yet, but we do have teams like Bayer Leverkusen. I mentioned Zenit St. Petersburg, and American clubs in the USA represented quite well. So that's a look at Portugal's club affiliations. Let's move on to talk about recent games. So we're examining the participation of players from the start of 2023. So Colombia has played, 15 games over that period, but 3 of them were experimental. So let's go through the games they've played since the beginning of 2023. The first one was in January 2023. That was experimental. We could call it a recruitment squad, but we don't get a lot of recruitment out of those players. Maybe a couple of players coming in. We also see a couple of veterans kind of who are no longer starters for the team. A few of them playing in these experimental games, but I think they're partly for recruitment. And I got to say, a lot of the players I haven't heard of other than in these games. So that's the first one in January, and we won't pay too much attention to it. We'll pay more attention to the 4 friendlies that followed in in March and June 2023. So they took a tour of Asia and played Japan and South Korea in March, and in June played a couple of friendlies there. In September, World Cup 2026 qualification began. So we have 6 games. 2 in September, 2 in October, 2 in November. So we do expect to be seeing their top players on the field there. So it's a good indication of who they might send to this cup. In January of 2024, They also had a couple of experimental games, so everything I said about the game above counts for here, and we won't be paying a lot of attention to those games because they don't really tell us much about the players we expect to see at the Cup. And in March of 2024, we have two friendlies, so a bit closer to the Cup there. And I'm looking forward to looking at the June friendlies that they'll be playing. We'll get to that right away. But before we do, we'll take a look at formations over these games. No, I didn't finish the recent game section. So as I said, we'll be kind of examining 12 games there in terms of player participation. In terms of tournament participation, Colombia reached the 2014 and 2018 World Cups, and but not the 2022 World Cup. So that was a bit of a disappointment to them. As far as Copa America goes, the qualification is automatic, so it's no great feat to reach the Cup. And they have taken part in all of those cups. So for the player history, we will go back to some of those tournaments, mostly the last two, I would say, the 2019 and 2021 Copa America, when we talk about the player histories. Same with their club history, we'll go back one or two clubs. Okay, now let's talk about the formations, and really they're quite consistent in using the 4-2-3-1 formation. They use that in 8 of the 12 games that we're closely examining, or 67% or 2/3 of the games. So when you envision Colombia, or as we go through section 2, keep that in mind, the 4-2-3-1 formation. 2 times they've used a 4-3-3 formation. That's 17% of the time, or about 1/5 of the time. And 2 times they have used different formations. So 2 single formations they used twice. Most of those unusual formations were in friendlies, and in the World Cup they used World Cup qualifiers. They used a 4-3-3 formation for the first 2 games, and in every major game after that, it's been the 4-2-3-1. So especially in the second half of the period, favoring that 4-2-3-1 formation. Okay, finally, we'll look at their upcoming games. I'm going to do something a little unusual with Colombia here, and that's on the YouTube graphic. I'm going to put up their last year of games, just because I use green to indicate a win, blue to indicate a tie, and red to indicate a loss. You'll see no red over the last year there. Just a sea of green. So they've won all of their games at home. That's 6 games, and they have not lost on the road, winning 3 and tying 2. So a pretty good record over the last year. But this section is meant to be for upcoming games, so we'll get back on topic here and say that Colombia has 2 friendlies scheduled, both of them in the USA, and the first one is against the host USA. That will be on June 8th, and then a week later on June 15th they play Bolivia, also in the USA there. So those games, as far as we're concerned, we're not so concerned about the results, but the lineups. And in part 2 of this media cast, when we get closer to the Cup, we will talk about the lineups that they use in those games. All right, that brings us to the end of part 1. So we move on to part 2 and start our main business here of looking at the candidates. So we begin with the manager, and here we have Néstor Lorenzo is the current manager. Doesn't have any tournament experience, and in fact is a bit lacking in experience overall. We'll talk about him as a player after we talk about him as a manager. So manager of Colombia since 2022, and he was with Melgar, a club in Peru, prior to that. And before Melgar, he has always been an assistant manager. So he was an assistant manager of the Colombia national team for a long time, from 2012 to 2019. Also assistant manager of the Argentina national team and the Argentina under-20 team, always an assistant, and also a couple of clubs in Mexico and one in Spain, again as an assistant manager. As a player, Lorenzo Nestor played for Argentina from 1988 to 1990, so fairly short stint with them, 13 caps and 1 goal. But he did play in the 1990 World Cup, and I have him for the 2004 World Cup. 2004 Copa America, perhaps. No, that doesn't fit time-wise. I must be making a mistake. Anyway, World Cup 1990, and then the other one, my information doesn't seem good, so I'll leave it alone. So, a player for Argentina. Let's begin our narrative, kind of a summary of the position, begin our narrative in 2012 with Jose Pekerman, also an Argentinian manager who led them through a very successful period. He got them through 2 World Cup qualifications. Colombia hadn't reached a World Cup since 1998, so that was a big achievement. And not only that, but they passed the group stage in both of those cups, reaching the quarterfinals in 2014. Pekerman also led them to a 3rd place finish in the Copa America Centenario in 2016. That was their best result since 2001 in Copa America. After the Cup, though, after the World Cup in 2018, Pekerman decided not to renew his contract. Since his departure in 2018, Colombia have been through 5 managers. The 3rd of those, Reynaldo Ruiz, actually, who was in his 2nd stint as manager of Colombia, he led them to another 3rd place finish in the 2021 Copa America. However, after they failed to qualify for the 2022 World Cup, he was no longer manager of the squad. An interim manager followed until Lorenzo was announced in September of 2022. And as we saw in part 1, Lorenzo has a stunning record, really, with Colombia, undefeated in their last 21 games under his management. So actually, he himself has never been defeated as a manager. So Nestor Lorenzo, their manager, taking them through this cup. Let's move on to goalkeepers and the candidates. We'll name the candidates first and then give a little career information on them. So we have 2 definite candidates here, Camilo Vargas and Alvaro Montero. One possible candidate in David Ospina. So even though we talked about him as a veteran in section 1, he is actually not that likely, or not likely to be the starter here. And I lied to you. We have 2 possible candidates. The other is Kevin Meyer. And then we have 1 player seemingly off the squad. We'll actually put him in the retired section. Alder Quintana. I only put him there because he was their backup keeper, one of the backup keepers in the 2021 Copa America, but he has not appeared for the national team since October of 2021. We also have a couple of other candidates, but I think we won't introduce them unless they appear on the squad so that we don't clutter up things too much with names. Let's go back and look at the main candidates then. We have Camilo Vargas, a definite candidate. He's 35 years old and has 21 caps for the national team since 2014. And he plays for Atlas in Mexico since 2019. And he has been a backup keeper for most of the tournaments since the World Cup in 2014. He was the backup there. The only one he missed was the Copa America Centenario in 2016. He didn't make the final cut. He was on the preliminary squad there, but didn't make the final cut. Otherwise, he's been at all tournaments, including the 2021 Copa America. But he's become a starter now with starting 10 of their 12. I'm going to say 12 significant games. From now on, I'm just going to say 12 games because we're ignoring those kind of experimental games. There, so he started 10 of the 12 games and was on the bench for one. He was suspended with the red card suspension for one other. So Camilo Vargas looking like the starting keeper here. Let's move on to our second definite candidate, Alvaro Montero. He is 29 years old and he has 6 caps for Colombia since 2019. He was a backup keeper in the 2019 Copa America, but under a doping ban at the time of the 2021 Copa America, so not selected for that squad. Since the beginning of 2023, Alvaro Montero has started 2 of their 12 games and subbed in for 1, but he's been on the bench for the 9 others. So definite candidate to be called up here, but probably the backup keeper. Next, we have David Ospina. He's 35 years old with 107 caps for the national team and since 2007, and he's the reason our 2 definite goalkeepers have so few caps over their many years with the team. Ospina was a starter in the 2014 World Cup and has basically been the starter in every tournament ever since. Including the 2021 World Cup. But since then, he was actually off the squad for a while. He returned after a 16-month injury absence in March 2024 and didn't start either of the remaining 2 games, but was on the bench for both. So it is possible that he could pick up as the starting keeper once again now that he's back from injury. But we don't think so. We have him as a possible candidate, so he might be selected. Next, we have Kevin Meyer, 24 years old, with no caps for Colombia. He plays for Cruz Azul in Mexico since 2024 and was in Colombia before that. Kevin Meyer has he got his first appearance in June of 2023 on the bench, didn't start any of the remaining games, but was on the bench for 6 of the games. However, he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches. David Ospina was selected instead. So maybe in reality, Kevin Meyer is possible, but unlikely. But it may be that David Ospina is not even selected for the Cup. There, we'll have to see. Okay, let's summarize the position of goalkeeper. Camilo Vargas has started all but 2 of the games. Montero has started 1 friendly and 1 World Cup qualification match when Vargas was suspended. He actually had received 2 yellow cards against Uruguay, so didn't play the following game. Ospina only started 1 of their experimental friendlies, but it was Montero starting the 2 other friendlies. So as far as the experimental games go, they didn't experiment with any new goalkeepers there. That's not true of most positions, though we see unfamiliar names in the experimental games. Okay, let's move on to defenders. We begin with central defenders. And let's list the candidates. So we have John Lukumi as a definite candidate. Oh, I'll talk about the position first before I list the candidates. For Colombia, it is always a 2-man central defense. So I forgot to point that out in section 1, but it's always a 4-man back line. So we're going to see 2 central defenders and a left back and a right back. Okay, now the candidates. So definite candidate, John Lukumi. Likely candidate, Carlos Cuesta. Possible candidate, Davinson Sanchez. And also possible, Yerry Mina. And then we have a lot of candidates who seem to be off the squad or are effectively off the squad, but we will put one of them in the list, and that is Oscar Murillo, a retired candidate, and we'll deal with him right away. He was a starter in the 2021 Copa America, but last appeared in February 2022. I think we mentioned him in section one. Four candidates who are seemingly off the squad. We'll bring them back into the discussion in part two if they appear on the preliminary or final squad. But let's look at the main candidates. John Lukumi is 25 years old, and he has 18 caps for Colombia since 2019 and plays for Bologna in Italy, a very successful team this year. And he was with Genk in Belgium before that. And he was part of the 2019 and 2021 Copa Americas, just kind of on the bench for those. Only saw one game over the entire two tournaments there. However, he has since become a starter, starting 10 of their 12 games since the start of 2023, and injured for two others. So John Lukumi finally getting his chance as a starter. Carlos Cuesta, our likely candidate, is 25 years old with 14 caps and no goals since 2021. And he also plays for Genk in Belgium. They were both on the team for about 4 years together, 3 years together, and Carlos Cuesta is still with Genk. Cuesta was selected for the 2021 Copa America, but he didn't see any action in that tournament either. And he has since started 5 of their 12 games. That includes the last 2 games, though, which bumps up his likelihood a little bit. Started 5, subbed in for 1, and was on the bench for 2. But there were 4 matches that he wasn't selected for. But because he started the last 2, we think he's a likely candidate here, especially since they'll probably bring 5 or 6 players here. The first of our 2 possible candidates is Davinson Sanchez. He is 27 years old with 58 caps and 1 goal for Colombia since 2016. And he's now with Galatasaray in Turkey since 2023. Had been with Tottenham for 6 years before that, and was part of the World Cup 2018 squad, his first tournament. He was a starter there and in the 2019 Copa America. He began as a substitute in 2021, but did gain a starting position after game 2 there. However, not really a starter since the beginning of 2023. He started 6 of their 12 games, subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. However, Sanchez was not selected for the last 3 matches, which is why we have him as a possible candidate. We value the recent games more in terms of assessing their likelihood. So Davinson Sanchez, just a possible candidate here. Let's move on to the other possible candidate, Yerry Mina. He's 29 years old with 43 caps and 7 goals since 2016. He's currently with Cagliari in Italy since 2024, Fiorentina in Italy before that, but he spent 5 years with Everton and he was with Barcelona in 2018 in Spain there, and has been part of tournaments ever since the 2016 Copa America Centenario. Just a starter, a substitute in there, and didn't appear in game 1 in the 2018 World Cup. But since game 2 of that tournament, he has been a starter in all the tournaments since, including the 2021 Copa America. However, he was absent for 17 months before returning to the squad in June of 2023, and only started 4 of their remaining 10 matches. He was on the bench for 1 and injured for 2. But like Davinson Sanchez, not selected for 3 others, including the last 2 matches. So these players who used to be starters now seem more like backup players. And I think we're ready to summarize the position. And again, well, maybe I'll throw out the names of these players who seem to be off the squad, because we only have 4 candidates here and they usually bring 5 or 6. So we'll just name them: Willard Ditta, Andres Linas, Andres Reyes, and Brian Vera. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is selected there. Let's summarize the position of central defence then. So we're always looking for 2 players to fill the spots here. Lukumi is a staple. Alongside of Lukumi, it's been a rotation of Cuesta, Mina, and Sanchez. All 3 of them appeared alongside Lukumi in the March and June friendlies of 2023. Sanchez playing 2 of those friendlies. Mina, Yerry Mina started the last game in June of 2023 and went on to start the first 2 games of World Cup qualifying. For the 3rd game, Lukumi was injured for the October games, and it was Sanchez and Cuesta starting as a pair. And Yerry Mina did return for the last World Cup qualifiers in November, but in March 2024, it was Cuesta and Lukumi in both games. So yes, we do expect to see Lukumi as a starter, but it's hard to say which of those 3 he will start alongside, Cuesta being the most likely from the information we have. Okay, let's move on to the left back position, and just a word on the position before we look at the candidates. Again, always a 4-man back line for Colombia, so this is always going to be a left back and right back position. We're not going to see it pushing up to a winger position as we do with some teams, especially when they use a 3-man back line. Okay, let's look at the candidates. No definite candidates here, but we have a likely candidate in David Machado. And Johan Mojica, also a likely candidate. We have a possible candidate in Juan Cabal. And we have three possible candidates here: Juan Cabal, Christian Borja, and Gabriel Fuentes. And then a possible but unlikely candidate in Frank Fabra. Holy cow, this is a lot of candidates for just one position. And at the beginning, we mentioned William Tasillo, who was in the role in the 2021 Copa America after Game 1, but has not appeared since March 2022. So we need a new candidate to fill the spot. Let's look at the candidates. David Machado is 31 years old with 9 caps since 2018. He plays for Lens in France and was with Toulouse in France prior to that. He's been with Lens since 2021. He's been around the squad since 2018, but has only made preliminary squads for tournaments, and not even that for the 2021 Copa America. So he's really struggled to get on the team. In fact, he was absent for 4 years until he returned in March 2023. But then he started 6 of their remaining 12 games and was on the bench for 3 of them. The only 3 he missed were the last 3, but that was due to injury, and he has since recovered. So we see David Machado as a likely candidate here. Johan Mojica, also a likely candidate, is 31 years old with 24 caps and 1 goal since 2015, and he plays for Villarreal in Spain since 2022, or at least is on their roster, but in fact is loaned out to Osasuna in Spain since 2023. He's played for a number of Spanish clubs since moving from Colombia in 2014, or really 2013. Tournament-wise, even though he's been with the team since 2015, it was the World Cup in 2018 that was his first tournament. He was on the preliminary squad for the 2015 Copa America, and the World Cup in 2018 is the only tournament that he's been part of. So not selected for the 2019 or the 2021 Copa Americas, Johan Mojica. He has started 3 of their games since the start of 2023. He's been on the bench for 3, injured for 2, and not selected for 4. But the reason we have him as a likely candidate here is that 2 of his 3 starts were in March of 2024. So that recent participation kind of bumping him up a little bit there. So Johan Mojica, a likely candidate. The first of the possible candidates is Juan Cabal. I probably should change the order here, but we'll go ahead. Juan Cabal is 23 years old, no caps for Colombia yet. Plays for Hellas Verona in Italy since 2022. He got his first appearance in March of 2024 there. He didn't start either of the remaining games, but was on the bench for both. So Juan Cabal, kind of a recent entry into the fray here, but a lot of competition, as you can see. Another competitor is Christian Borja, who is 31 years old, but just 7 caps for the national team. He plays for Braga in Portugal and was with Sporting Lisbon in Portugal prior to that. He was part of the 2019 Copa America squad, only appeared in game 3 there, which was a B team game, but not selected for the 2021 Copa America, and in fact was off the team for 4 years until his return in October 2023, after which Borja started one of their 5 remaining games and subbed in for one and was on the bench for one, and not selected for the last 2 matches. So yes, I can see why we have him below Juan Cabal there. Third and final possible candidate, Gabriel Fuentes, is 27 years old with no caps with the national team. He's one of the few players who plays in Colombia. He's with Junior in Colombia since 2018. Scratch that though, because he was loaned to Zaragoza in Spain for a year. But no, he is still in Colombia. That's right. Gabriel Fuentes, he actually made a single appearance on the bench back in October in 2020, but then was off the team and for 3.5 years until he returned in March of 2024. And like Juan Cabal, was on the bench for both of those games. So we will kind of move him up because we think recent participation is a bit more telling than historical participation. So Gabriel Fuentes and Juan Cabal kind of in the same barrel there. Our possible but unlikely candidate is Frank Fabra. He was part of the 2019 and 2021 Copa America squads. However, over the recent period, he started one of their 12 games, but was out with 2 separate injuries for 4 and not selected for the 7 others. So did get 1 start over this period, but looks unlikely, especially given the competition above. Because after all, we are just talking about 1 position here. So that's a lot of candidates for just 1 position. Let's look at a summary of the position. 3 different players started in the March to June 2023 friendlies. Mojica was one of them, and Machado was the only one who played more than once. He played twice in that period, and Machado went on to play 4 of the 6 World Cup qualifiers, but Fabra and Borja each got a start there too. Machado was injured for the 2 games in March of 2024, and Mojica returned to start both of them. And we also see 2 of the possible players being called up there too. So it looks like they're still looking for the prime candidate for this squad. Machado seems the most likely at this point, but it doesn't seem like they're completely satisfied with him because they keep trying out new players in his place. Okay, so again, we look forward to the June warm-ups to see what they're going to do there. Let's go over to right back, and fortunately we have fewer candidates here, so we begin with a definite candidate, Daniel Munoz. And we also have a likely candidate in Yerson Mosquera. So generally for these left and right backs, they choose two players, a starter and a backup mostly. We have a possible player in Santiago Arias. So here we see another veteran kind of drifting off the squad a little bit. And Juan Mosquera is possible but unlikely here. We'll just mention retired player Stefan Medina. He's been part of several squads, including the 2021 Copa America, even though he wasn't a starter in that one. And Stefan Medina last appeared for the team in September 2022, so seems off the squad now. Let's go back and look at the more likely candidates. Daniel Munoz, a definite candidate, is 28 years old with 25 caps and 1 goal for Colombia since 2021. And he plays for Crystal Palace in England since 2024 and is another player who was with Genk in Belgium. So we had a gathering at the gathering of the Colombian squad in Genk around 2020. He was with them for 4 years. Munoz was a starter in the 2021 Copa America. That's his first and only tournament. And since the beginning of 2023, Munoz has started 10 of their 12 games and not selected for 2 matches. So Daniel Munoz, a definite candidate. Yerson Mosquera is 23 years old. He's actually coded as a central defender, but we moved him here because he got his only start as a right back. He has 3 caps for the national team since 2023 and plays for Wolverhampton in England. He was loaned, though, in 2024 to Villarreal in Spain. Yerson Mosquera got his first appearance in June of 2023. He started 1 of the remaining 10 games, as well as subbing in for 2. And he was on the bench for 5. So just 2 matches that Mosquera was not selected for. And that's why we consider Yerson Mosquera a likely candidate for selection for the squad. Even though probably not a starter. Santiago Arias is the veteran of the group. He's 32 years old with 56 caps since 2013. No goals for him. He plays for Bahia in Brazil since 2024 and with FC Cincinnati in 2023. Actually, Yerson Mosquera was also loaned to Cincinnati in 2023, so they would have been together there, both right backs. Santiago Arias, though, played for Atletico Madrid in Spain for 4 years. A pretty good resume here with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany and PSV Eindhoven in Netherlands and Sporting Lisbon in Portugal. Good Lord, his passport must look well stamped. Arias was part of the squad for the 2014 World Cup and has been part of every tournament since, except the 2021 Copa America, for which he was not selected. However, he did return after an almost 3-year absence in September of 2023 and started 1 of their remaining 8 games, as well as subbing in for the last one. And he was also on the bench for 2 others. So making a bit of a comeback is Santiago Arias, but certainly not the prime candidate that he was in the past. Finally, we have Juan Mosquera as a possible candidate, not to be confused with Yerson Mosquera, who we just talked about. Juan Mosquera is 21 years old with 3 caps for Colombia since 2023, and he plays for Portland Timbers in the USA since 2022. So he was on the bench for 5 games. including the first 4 matches of this period, the first 4 friendlies of 2023, not selected for 7 others, including the last 4 matches. However, Juan Mascara did start in all of their 3 experimental matches in 2023. So he did kind of transition from that experimental squad to the A team, as it were, even though he was just on the bench. So maybe B team is more accurate. But not many players did actually transition from those experimental squads. Okay, so Juan Mascara, possible but unlikely here. And let's look at the position. Muniz has a pretty firm grip on the starting position. He started all of the games except the October World Cup qualifiers. Veteran Arias replaced him in the first of those games, and then Yerson Mosquera, actually a central defender, replaced him in the second. As we saw, Juan Mosquera only got starts in the experimental matches, but did transition up to the bench for the senior team. However, that was only at the beginning and not at the end. So we'll have to see in the future if the young Juan Mosquera makes it to the top team. All right, that completes our look at the defense. So we move on to the midfield. We begin with defensive midfielders. So let's talk about the position. If you envision the 4-2-3-1 formation, you'll see that it's usually a 2-man position, and they use that formation about 2/3 of the time. In one of the unusual formations they used, they had a stopper. That's a 4-1-4-1 formation. And in 2 games, they used a 4-3-3 formation. So technically, that's 1 central midfielder and a left midfielder and right midfielder. If we have teams playing that formation a lot, we do separate the left and right midfielders and look at them individually. But here it's just 2 games. And the players that we're introducing as defensive or central midfielders are covering that position. So we won't separate it out. Let's look at the candidates. We have as a definite candidate Jefferson Lerma, and we have Kevin Castano as a likely candidate as defensive midfielders. Let's look at them, and then we'll look at central midfielders. We'll kind of treat them as one otherwise. Jefferson Lerma is 29 years old, and he plays for Colombia since 2017 with 41 caps and 1 goal. He is with Crystal Palace in England, so playing together with Daniel Munoz there. He's been there since 2023. Bournemouth in England for 5 years before that, and he also played in Spain. Lerma's first tournament was the World Cup in 2018. He was a starter for that. Just a substitute, though, in the 2019 Copa America, and then not part of the squad for the 2021 Copa America. That was a bit of a shock, but it was said to be for personal reasons there. Since the start of 2023, Lerma has started 7 of their 12 games. He subbed in for 1 and was injured for 2. And the 2 matches that he wasn't selected for were the first 2 matches, so don't really count against him. We consider him a definite candidate, Jefferson Lerma. Kevin Castano is 23 years old and has 8 caps for the national team since 2023, so quite new to the squad. Castano plays for Krasnodar in Russia since 2024 and was with Cruz Azul in Mexico. Cruz Azul is another club where we see a lot of Colombians kind of gathering. Kevin Castano actually was one of the players who got his first appearance in the experimental friendly in January 2023, but he emerged from that and started 6 of their 12 games over the period we're looking at. Also subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 3. So a very successful recruitment from that friendly in January 2023, and Kevin Castano a likely candidate here. Okay, before we talk about the position, we'll look at the central midfielders too, because they kind of interchange. We have a definite candidate. We don't have a definite candidate, actually. We have a likely candidate in Richard Rios, and a possible candidate in Mateus Uribe. I'm a bit surprised to see him just at the possible level here. We also have Wilmar Barrios at the possible level, and two more besides, Juan Portilla and Gustavo Puerta. So four possible candidates there. And in section one, we talked about Gustavo Cuellar, who is who was part of the Copa America. We didn't talk about him in section one, actually, because he was only a substitute in the 2019 and 2021 Copa Americas. So we only talked about starters. We'll just say that Gustavo Cuellar has not appeared for the squad since March of 2022, and anything more to be said, we'll wait for part two if he's selected for the squad. Let's go back to the main candidates then. Richard Rios is 23 years old, and he has 5 caps since 2023 for the national team, and plays for Palmeiras in Brazil since 2023, and he's been with a few Brazilian clubs, including Flamengo, which was his youth club. I don't think he was born in Brazil, though. I think he played for other Colombian youth clubs before moving to Flamengo. Okay, let's look at him. No tournament experience then for Richard Rios. In fact, he got his first appearance in September 2023, started one of their remaining 7 games, but then was subbed in for 4 of them and on the bench for 2 others. So he's been selected consistently, Richard Rios, and that's why we have him as a likely candidate. The first possible candidate is Mateus Uribe, and he is 33 years old with 53 caps and 6 goals for the national team since 2017. And he's currently with Al Sadd in Qatar since 2023, but he did play for Porto in Portugal prior to that, from 2019 to 2023. Mateus Uribe was part of a tournament squad since the 2018 World Cup, and he was a starter in the 2021 Copa America. Over the recent period, he has started 8 of their 12 games, subbed in for 2, and not selected for the last 2 matches. Oh, that's a bit harsh to have him as just a possible candidate. I think he's at least as likely as Richard Rios. In fact, probably more. But as I said, we do value kind of recent participation quite highly. So when a player is off the team just before the cup, it doesn't bode well. But I think we've been a little harsh here. Anyway, we'll leave him where he is. There. Next, we have Wilmar Barrios. He's 30 years old and has 57 caps and 1 goal since 2016. And Barrios plays for Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia since 2019 and was with Boca Juniors in Argentina before that. He was on the preliminary squad for the 2016 Copa America Centenario, but didn't make the final cut. However, after that, since the World Cup in 2018, he's been selected consistently, just a sub in that 2018 World Cup, but a starter in the 2019 and 2021 Copa Americas. And William Barrios is not a starter now, though, has started only 1 of their 12 games since the beginning of 2023. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. However, he was injured for the first 2 and more significantly not selected for the last 4 matches. So definitely just a possible candidate, Wilmar Barrios. The third possible candidate and fourth ones are newer to the squad. Juan Portilla is 25 years old, but doesn't have a cap for the squad yet. He plays for Colombia in Argentina, and he got his first appearance just recently in March 2024 on the bench for both games. So a late entry into the fray, and same with Gustavo Puerta. Uh, um, uh, First appeared in March 2024 and was on the bench for both games. He too has no caps for Colombia, but is younger than Portilla. He's 20 years old, and he's with Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2023. So that is a pretty good club affiliation for Gustavo Puerta. Anyway, he's just at the possible level here as far as the national team goes. And those are the candidates in central midfield. Again, we're basically trying to fill two positions here. So if we go back to a summary of the position, we're including defensive and central midfielders here. Let's start with the game where they used just one of them, one defensive midfielder as a stopper. That was a friendly, and it was Castano playing the role of stopper. For the two-man position, kind of defensive / central midfielder, which they use most of the time. Roughly speaking, it's a rotation of Uribe, Lerma, and Castano. Uribe started the first 8 games, but he dropped out in the last 4 games, first as a substitute and then not selected. Lerma and Castano started 2 of the last 3 games as a pair, but in the final game in March 2024, it was Lerma and Rios. Rios in his first start there. Several players came in for single appearances, but only one of them, that's attacking midfielder Jorge Carrascal, who's quite a versatile player. Only he appeared more than once in the position. He appeared twice. So a little kind of mixed up here, especially with Uribe dropping out of the picture a little bit. I'll be interested to see if he comes back in June. All right, let's move on to upfield, to left attackers here. So just on the position in the predominantly 4-2-3-1, 4-2-3-1 formation. It is a left attacking and right attacking midfield position. The 2 times they used a 4-3-3 formation, it becomes a left forward and right forward position. Let's take a look at the candidates. So we have a definite candidate in Luis Diaz. And that's all we have over here, actually. Just a player seemingly off the squad, Jairo Moreno. And we'll deal with him right here. He was a starter in the 2021 Copa America. However, he got injured in game 1, and that ended his tournament there. Jairo Moreno hasn't appeared for the national team since September of 2022. So just one candidate over here, Luis Diaz, a definite candidate. He is 27 years old with 47 caps and 11 goals since 2018. And he plays for Liverpool in England since 2022. He was with Porto in Portugal from 2019 to 2022. He was part of the Copa America in 2019. He only started game 3, the B team game there, otherwise subbed into a couple of games. And in 2021, he also began as a substitute in game 2, but then gained a starting position for games 4 onwards, and really made a good impression there. He was a co-winner of the Golden Boot Award in that tournament and named to the team of the tournament. Luis Diaz, over the recent period, has started 10 of their 12 significant games since the start of 2023, and he was injured for 2 others. So Luis Diaz, the main man over here. Let's summarize the position. Actually, the position was played by 4 different players in the March to June 2023 friendlies. One of those was Diaz, who took full control of the position from the first World Cup qualifier onwards. So he played all 6 World Cup qualifiers and the 2 March 2024 friendlies in this position. Okay, let's move to right attackers, and we have a definite candidate in John Arias over here. and a possible candidate in Carlos Andres Gomez, and a possible but unlikely candidate in John Duran. Here, as with other positions, we do have other candidates who are seemingly off the squad. We're not going to name them. We're not going to name them all unless they seem like they have a good chance of making the squad. We will mention seemingly off the squad Yimi Chara, and he was part of the 2021 Copa America squad there as a substitute, but hasn't appeared since February of 2022. So Yimi Chara doesn't look like a candidate for this cup. Let's go back to the beginning with the definite candidate, John Arias. He's 26 years old. He has 13 caps and 1 goal since 2022 for Colombia, and he plays for Fluminense in Brazil since 2021, and with Colombian teams prior to that. He actually did play for a couple of youth clubs in Mexico, John Arias, and he got his first appearance back in June 2022, and over the recent period started 9 of their 12 significant games since the start of 2023, as well as subbing in for 2. So just one match that he wasn't selected for, John Arias, and now inserting himself as a starter. He not only starts in this position, we have seen him start elsewhere too, so we'll mention it when it's important. The possible candidate, Carlos Andres Gomez, is just 21 years old with 2 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2023. He plays for Real Salt Lake in the USA since 2023 and was with Millonarios in Colombia prior to that. He did actually make his first appearance in one of the experimental friendlies in December of 2023, so one of the few players to emerge from that. And he was called up for the March 2024 games. He didn't start either of them, but was on the bench for both. So another late possibility here. Carlos Andres Gomez. John Duran is a possible but unlikely candidate. He's 20 years old and has 8 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2022. And he's with Aston Villa in England since 2023. Chicago Fire in the USA before that. He started 1 of their 12 games over the recent period and was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. However, he has not been called up for the last 4 matches, John Duran, so we have to put him as a possible but unlikely candidate, although really seems more of a possible candidate, especially since of his good club. Especially because of his good club affiliation there with Aston Villa. Those are the candidates over here. Let's take a look at the summary of the position. So here too, we have 3 different players starting the first 4 games. One of them was Juan Cuadrado, who we have as an attacking midfielder. We'll meet him soon here. He played 1 of the friendlies and the first World Cup qualifier. John Arias was not one of the ones playing the early friendlies, but from the second World Cup qualifier onwards, he becomes the main player in the position. He started the last 3 games as well. We also see central midfielder Uribe and the forward Borre also appear in the position. And as I said, Arias sometimes starts in other positions as well. Nevertheless, he looked like the main candidate over here, John Arias. And we move on to central midfield attackers, yes. And just a quick word on the position before we meet the candidates. This position is used quite often in their preferred 4-2-3-1 formation. So it's the central attacking midfielder there. And as we saw in section 1, this formation, the 4-2-3-1, was not used that much in the first half of the period, and so we don't actually have this position in the beginning. But then from the 3rd game of World Cup qualifiers, they always use the 4-2-3-1, so we do have the position after that. Let's look at the candidates. Here we have James Rodriguez, the captain of the team, as a definite candidate. No, as a likely candidate. I thought there was something wrong there. And we also have Jorge Carrascal as a likely candidate. Juan Cuadrado, who we just mentioned, is just a possible candidate here. And we also have Juan Fernando Quintero, Luis Sinisterra, and Yasser Asprilla as possible candidates. So 4 possible candidates in all. And we also have a possible and unlikely candidate in Jamington Campaz. He was actually a bit of a surprise selection for the 2021 Copa America, but just as a sub in one game there. He was off the squad for 17 months before returning in November 2023, but he was just on the bench for one game and subbed in for one game and then not selected for the March 2024 matches. So we consider him unlikely, Campaz. And finally, we have Edwin Cardona as a retired player. And he was a starter in the 2021 Copa America, but has not appeared for the national team since then. Let's go back to the more likely candidates. We'll talk about James Rodriguez, the captain. He is 32 years old with 98 caps and 27 goals since 2011. And he plays for Sao Paulo in Brazil since 2023. He was with Olympiacos before that and Al Rayyan in Qatar before that. But many will know him from Real Madrid, where he was from 2014 to 20, loaned out to Bayern Munich at the end of that period, and some big clubs before that. So James Rodriguez, quite a famous player for Colombia, and he really earned his reputation in the 2014 World Cup. That was his first tournament. He was a starter, and has been part of every tournament since, except the 2021 Copa America. That was a bit of a shock to outsiders, but insiders know that there was some kind of conflict between him and manager Rueda, a story we won't get into. But anyway, over the recent period, James Rodriguez has started 6 of their 12 games, subbed in for 3 and not selected for 3 others. So we have him as a likely candidate. The fact that he's captain boosting that likelihood a little bit. Next is also likely Jorge Carrascal. So he is 26 years old with 13 caps and 1 goal since 2022. So a bit late in joining the national team there. He has been with 2 teams in Russia since 2022, currently Dynamo Moscow, and prior to that, CSKA Moscow. He's a bit of a traveler, having played in Argentina, Ukraine, and Spain as well. And Carrascal first appeared in September 2022, and over the recent period has started 6 of their 12 games, just like James Rodriguez, and he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2 others. So always selected Jorge Carrascal, and we do see him playing in a couple of different positions here. Next is the first of our 4 possible candidates, Juan Cuadrado. A very long career, and we could go into a lot of detail, but we won't. He's 36 years old now with 116 caps and 11 goals since 2010. He's still with Inter Milan in Italy. So, I mean, still as in the sense that he's still with top clubs. He was with Juventus from 2017 to 23, and teams like Chelsea, Fiorentina, mostly in Italy, Juan Cuadrado, and a member of the squad since the 2011 Copa America, never missing any tournaments and usually a starter in them. But over the recent period, Cuadrado has started only 3 of their 12 games. He was on the bench for 1, but an injury and then surgery on that injury caused him to miss 7 games there. So hasn't been that involved in the squad. And, you know, given his age, probably won't be a starter. Juan Cuadrado, a possible candidate here. Next is Juan Fernando Quintero. He's 31 years old with 34 caps and 4 goals since 2012, and currently with Racing Club in Argentina since 2023, and has played all over the place as well: China, Portugal, and France, and so on. Juan Fernando Quintero has been, he was part of the World Cup in 2022. Sorry, what am I talking about? In 2014, but missed the 2 tournaments after that. In fact, he has missed all of the Copa America tournaments, but has been part of both of the World Cup tournaments and was a starter in the 2018 World Cup there. Recently, though, he has started none of their games. He was just subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2, but one of his substitutions was for the last match. So that kind of raised him up to the possible level here. Third possible candidate, Luis Sinisterra, is 24 years old with 11 caps and 3 goals for the national team since way back in 2019. However, has never been called up for a tournament for Colombia. He is currently playing for Bournemouth in England since 2024 and Leeds United before that. Feyenoord in the Netherlands from 2018 to 2022. And Luis Sinisterra has not started any of their games over the recent period, but he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. However, he was not selected for 6 matches, including the last 2. So only a possible candidate here is Luis Sinisterra. I do think his stock may have gone up, though, since March of 2024. So perhaps raising the possibility level for Sinisterra a little bit there. Finally, we have Yasser Asprilla. Just 20 years old, but 4 caps and 2 goals for Asprilla since 2022. He's also in England playing for Watford since 2022. And he first appeared in January 2022. And got some starts during that year. I think hadn't started any of the games over the recent period, just subbed in for 2 matches there, but he was on the bench for 5 matches, so is a possible candidate, though not likely a starter. Jasper Asprilla. Okay, that's a lot of candidates for what's basically one position, but there is a possibility of them playing elsewhere on the field, as we see with Jorge Carrascal. Let's talk about the position. So again, the position was not used much at first, only in one friendly where Carrascal played the role in the first part of the period. Arias played it the next time. That was the 3rd game of the World Cup qualification. But after that, it was always Rodriguez in the role. And the only exception at the end there was the second last game. That was the first game in March 2024, where Carrascal returned to the role with Rodriguez playing it in the last match. Okay, that is the attacking midfield position. Let's move on to forwards, and we don't have any players currently coded as secondary strikers, so we go right to the centre forwards and a little bit about the position before we look at the candidates. So for Colombia, it's almost always a single player. That's obvious in their preferred 4-2-3-1 formation. In the 4-3-3 formation, which they've used twice, we consider it a single centre forward with a left attacker and right attacker on either side. They did have one friendly with 2 forwards in the position, which we'll talk about. Okay, let's look at the candidates. We have Rafael Santos Borré as a definite candidate. And Luis Diaz was coded as a forward, but we moved him to a left attacker since he's played primarily in that position. We have 2 possible candidates, Mateo Cassiera here, and also John Cordoba. and then one possible but unlikely candidate in Cucho Hernandez, and seemingly or basically retired. We'll just mention the names of Radamel Falcao, and he last actually appeared in March of 2023. So, despite not playing in the 2021 Copa America, he has played. He did play for the squad after that. Okay, I said I'd just give the names. Next, we have Miguel Borja. Last appeared in March 2022, and Luis Muriel last appeared also in March of 2022, and Duvan Zapata last appeared in November 2021. All of these were selected for the 2021 Copa America. Okay, let's go back to the top. Look at our only really top candidate, Rafael Santos Borre, at the definite level. He's 28 years old with 32 caps and 5 goals for the national team since 2019, and he plays for Internacional in Brazil since 2014. However, he did play in Europe for Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany, and for Werder Bremen from 2021 to 24, and also in Argentina, and from Atletico Madrid in Spain, Borre played for. In terms of tournaments, though, he was not selected for any tournament until the 2021 Copa America. He actually had been around on the squad. He was an unused substitute in March of 2015, so has been around the squad since then. So actually 3 Copa Americas that he really wasn't a consideration for until the 2021 version when he was a starter, starting in several, not all of the games there. He's a starter now, though, with 10 of the 12 significant games since the start of 2023, and he subbed in for the 2 others. So Borre has become a key player for them and is a definite candidate here. The first of the 2 possible candidates, Mateo Cassiera, is 27 years old. But just 3 caps and 1 goal for the national team since 2023, so a bit of a late joiner there. He plays for Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia since 2022, and he's also played in Portugal and for Ajax in the Netherlands. But he got his first appearance in June 2023, and just started one of their remaining 10 games, but he was subbed in for the first 2 and on the bench for 3 others. So Mateo Cassiera, a possible candidate, perhaps even a little bit higher, given the lack of other candidates here. The other possible candidate, John Cordoba, is 31 years old and very late to the team. He got his first cap in 2023 and only has 3 caps and 1 goal. He plays for Krasnodar in Russia since 2021 and has played for several German teams, including Hertha Berlin most recently. John Cordoba actually first appeared on the bench for 2 games in late 2020, then was off the team for almost 3 years, and returned in September 2023. And he started the last one of their remaining 7 games, as well as subbing in for 2 and being on the bench for 3. But he was not selected for 2 games in October. John Cordoba, then a possible candidate here. And we have possible but unlikely Cucho Hernandez, and he didn't start any games over the recent period. He was just on the bench for 1 and not selected for the 11 others. However, he did play in 2 of their experimental friendlies, Cucho Hernandez, so unlikely here, but not completely impossible. And as we see, a lot of retired players from this position, and Borre is carrying the load here, as we'll see in the summary of the position, which we will do right now. So Borre in 3 of the 4 friendlies was the centre forward in March and June of 2023, and then attacking midfielder Carrascal played as a centre forward in the other friendly. In the game with two forwards, Borre was partnered by Luis Diaz. I think that was the only time we saw Diaz as a forward, though. In all the World Cup qualifiers except one, it was Borre. The one he didn't start was Rodriguez, James Rodriguez, in the starting position. However, in the last two games, Casiera and Cordoba each got a start in the positions. So Rafael Santos Borre is still the most likely starter there, but we have seen other players in the position. All right, that brings us to the end of section 2 and our look at the players, and we move on to section 3 and any closing thoughts. Well, I can't say I have anything on my mind right now, so we're going to jump right to the review of the starters, and I'm just going to pause the video to set that up. Okay, here we are at the top of the list we just created, and we will say Nesta Lorenzo is a starter, the manager, since we don't think he'll be dismissed before the Cup or anything. For goalkeepers, people might be expecting David Ospina, and there is a bit of a chance of that since he came back from an injury. But honestly, he seems a bit out of the picture now, and Camilo Vargas seems much more likely to be the starter there from the information we have, at least. On to central defenders. Always two for Colombia in the four-man backline, and John Lukumi pretty much guaranteed to be one of them, so we're confident enough to nominate him. However, even though we think Carlos Cuesta is the next more likely, it has been a bit of a rotation with him, Davinson Sanchez and Yerry Mina, so we don't know really who is going to start beside Lukimi, and we don't feel confident enough in Cuesca to nominate him. Let's go over to the left back position, and again, kind of a bit of conflicting information here. Machado played was the main candidate, but he didn't really play enough for us to nominate him as a starter. He was also injured in the last two games, and Mojica, Johan Mojica, took over. So we don't know if Machado will come back into the position. So we're not willing to nominate anyone here. Even the fact that some players came in for single games suggests to us that they're not really satisfied with what they have over here. So we might see some changes before the Cup. Over on the right back, though, it is a more clear picture, and Daniel Munez, we are confident he's going to be the starter there. So we will nominate him as a starter. In the midfield, it's been a bit of a rotation among Jefferson Lermer, Kevin Castano, and Uribe, Mateus Uribe. Uribe was kind of a staple in the position for 8 of the games over the period, but kind of dropped off in the last couple of games. So we're not really sure. We also have attacking midfielder Jorge Carrascal coming into the position. So we're not really confident to nominate players here. But Jefferson Lermer, Kevin Castano, and I think Uribe will kind of come back into the picture. So I'm on the wrong graphic for the YouTube watchers there. I don't think we're really confident enough to nominate a starter here. Just those 3 will probably be among those 3. But we also had Richard Rios coming into the picture at the very end as a starter. So no nominations here. Up to left attacking midfield, and Luis Diaz almost certain to be the starter as the left attacker. Really, no candidates there to challenge him. It's almost that way on the other side with John Arias, except we're not as confident about him as we are Luis Diaz. We do have a couple of other players coming into the position, and also John Arias starting in other positions. So we will nominate John Arias as a starter, not just for this position, but somewhere on the field, probably in this position. Moving on to central attackers. It kind of comes down to whether they use the 4-2-3-1 formation, which they have used in recent times, with James Rodriguez mostly in the role, but it just hasn't been used enough. Rodriguez only started half of the games, so that's not enough for us to nominate him as a starter. Oh, but it is hard to imagine him not starting if he is selected. So I'm gonna say James Rodriguez as a starter, and probably because he is there, they'll probably stick with the central attacking midfield position, which they didn't use when he wasn't around in the first half of the period. Jorge Carrascal is almost tempting to nominate as a starter in this or in some position. I wouldn't be surprised, but he too has only started half of their games, so not quite enough there to nominate him. Moving on to the forwards, though, Rafael Santos Borré, we do see as a starter, partly because of a bit of a lack of candidates up front here. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of new names brought in to the position, because we have Borré as a definite candidate, no likely candidates, and then we're down to just possible candidates. Although we have seen a couple of other players, Carrascal and Luis Diaz in the position, as well as Rodriguez. So they have kind of backup, but I think need a few more candidates. All right, that is the end of the starter review. So we move on to almost our last order of business, the review of injuries. And this is pleasantly short for Colombia, because they have none. No injuries concerns for Colombia. So we'll review that when we get to the part 2 and we see what happens in June. And actually, we're going to end on that note by previewing part 2. So that'll come out when the final squads are selected, and we'll point out any notable non-selections. That's likely or definite players on our list here who are not selected, and any surprise inclusions. That would be players at the possible but unlikely level or below who are called up for the squad, and any new players that come in. Because after all, it is quite a while between March and June, so things can happen in between. We'll also update any injuries. Colombia fans will be hoping that it remains the same as it is now, with no injury concerns. And we will end with that, hoping. I'm just going to get the graphics right here, because I like to end with a nice picture. So we do hope that our look at the players here helps you appreciate Colombia more when you're watching them on the field. See you for part 2. We would like to thank Paul Udin and Pixabay for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast. The piece is called Victory Epic Music.